Hello and good morning, traders from Chicago. It is Tuesday, the 14th of October, 2025. It's 8:02 a.m. Chicago time. A quick reminder that derivatives trading involves substantial risk of loss and is not suitable for all investors. Past performance is not necessarily indicative of future results. We've got quite a bit of action this morning. Hopefully you hear me loud and clear. Welcome to all of our accelerator program participants from Convergent Trading. This is your live trading week. We fire it off with the TraderBite, and then we go into live trading. You should have the Zoom link already in your email, and we'll jump on Zoom after this. Okay, so what do we have today? Very bright blue RN and RVol ranges, just completely blown out of the water. Current range versus the average of the range at this time over the last 20 sessions running 300+%, and RVol is running 200 to 300%. So we've got quite a bit of volatility driven by overnight news. The Chinese government responds to the threats by Trump on Friday, and we also have some earnings this morning. So let's get through it. Strong risk off. We have the Russell, the Nasdaq off more than 1%. The DAX as well. Crude tumbling right through into the $58 handle, which was the key target from a couple of weeks ago. We're talking about it for some time. Silver off by 2%, and gold is off just slightly. Gold still holding its spot. Copper down 3.5%, anticipating a slowdown in overall productivity. Strong risk off. Pre-market releases: JP Morgan, Johnson & Johnson, Wells Fargo, Citigroup, Albertsons, Goldman Sachs, BlackRock are some of the majors. Nothing after the close. UK unemployment rate higher than expected. German ZU lower than expected. U.S. government shutdown continues, and we are a day away from October 15th, where people are going to find out that they're not going to get paid, and these politicians don't really care if they do. And so here we are. The White House is reportedly preparing for a long shutdown and has found several new funding streams for critical programs, according to top Trump administration officials. China increases oversight of export license applications for rare earth magnets. China officially began special port fees for U.S. ships. This is the news. French PM Locarno, his government is to present a budget aiming to reduce the deficit to 4.7% by 2026, by the end of 2026. Pretty lofty goal. Strong U.S. bank earnings pre-open. Oracle Cloud announces plans to deploy 50,000 AMD AI chips. Broadcom set to launch Thor Ultra AI networking chip, deepening competition with NVIDIA. And Samsung drops despite earnings beat. Ericsson surging after it beat on profits and raised guidance. LVMH due to report today at some point. Don't know when. The S&P is in a multi-distribution profile, pretty active price discovery so far, and the volume is pretty outstanding, well above the 1 standard deviation limit, trading at 368,000 contracts. The inventory 76% short, and the range is very, very wide at 112 points. Yesterday, I was starting to have doubts about whether or not we'll take the overnight high. And get the overnight stat, and we did. We got the IB and the overnight stat. Did not get the prior settle stat, however. What's left for today? We've got Fed's Bowman already speaking. Started about 20 minutes ago. We have the IMF World Economic Outlook, which came out at 9 Eastern. It's the IMF forecast GDP growth at 3.2%. in July came out with 3%, due to less severe trade shocks and easier financial conditions. And then you'll see the rest of it. 12:20 U.S. Fed Chair Powell speaking. And then this evening, the Chinese inflation rate year on year for September at 9:30 Eastern. That's the big picture. You can see cryptos are off still. Ether really taking a banging right now. And I know a huge number of crypto account holders got liquidated on Friday. I think 1.6 million accounts got liquidated. A whole bunch of millionaires went bust on Friday, unfortunately, but that's just the way it is. Trading crypto on leverage will do that. This is a screenshot, basically a freeze of yesterday's TraderBite. If you recall, this is basically our recap segment here. If you recall, the expectation is that, hey, we know that we have a bounce, but the indications in the overnight session were that despite the wide range of 74.25 points, we held basically on top of the MCV-POC, and we held on top of the overnight point of control and the overnight day-generated prices, DGPs. And so the expectation is for a choppy open. The primary scenario being that we would likely pull down just slightly into the 66.60 and then push for 67.20 to break the overnight high and likely the IB high and so on. The secondary scenario is we go sideways. We squeeze into the 6,700, which is what it looked like until later in the session. Squeeze into the 6,700. Go to the middle and just have wide swings and then eventually break lower into 66.50. This is what actually took place yesterday. This is my overview chart. Let's go to the ES. So you could see here what happened yesterday. Really just traded sideways. Let me change the color for a second. Let's go to our demonstrative yellow. So what we had here is just absolutely back and forth action. It just looked like it would break, and it didn't, and it just gyrated. We ended up testing that 66.60 and ultimately pushing higher above the overnight high for scenario one. Couldn't quite get to 67.20 last night, but guess what? Yesterday, but guess what? Last night it got to the 67.20, so it took it just the entire session and the overnight to creep up into the expected area. Why did we expect the primary scenario to be up given how strongly this sold off on Friday? The reason is once we gap and took over the DGPs from Friday, the VWAP, the full session VWAP, as well as the full session mid, it basically positioned itself such that it is likely to now squeeze. Had the market remained sold, meaning it wasn't cheap enough and that the sellers were still in control, it would not have been able to do that. It just would not have been able to do that. It pushed through DGPs in the overnight session to put in a pretty steady high, and then it failed to come back to the open. So you had a higher retest on a balanced profile. It's likely to resolve. If it's going to resolve, it's likely to resolve to the upside, and that's what we expected. Overnight, of course, tonight we had China come in and with their news during their day session, and that made the market roll over, and then it accelerated a little bit on the European Open right here. And so now we have a multi-distribution profile, and overall we have separation between price and the DGPs, and we have this kind of balancing act occurring right now. It appears to have left an excess on a retest. It put in a second excess. It's trading against the 6620, remember from scenario 2 yesterday. And, or actually this was scenario 3. And overall, we remain separated from VWAP. So the bias today, given that we have taken out Sunday's opening print, which had about 1,800 contracts buy at the open in a collision, the fact that we're down here, this shows a little bit of weakness, leaving us with the naked. By the way, yesterday I said the point of control had not shifted. My data was on 1 minute. When I do research, I switch to 1 minute because I don't want it to load tick data for the last 6 months. It takes forever. So I switched to 1 minute, and as a result, it did not shift the point of control to the bottom of the range, and it did. However, still, that shift in the point of control occurred in the last minute, and it just doesn't look very orderly here on the low. In any case, that low is now vulnerable, and we're going to monitor for a test of it. We'll see what happens. I mean, we ended up pushing through after the close on Friday, after the cash close on Friday, yet we gapped up on Sunday. So what we have here is a situation where there's conflicting information, a fair bit of noise, but the latest information that we have, here is that we are below VWAP. We are away from where balance was up here, and we are not responsive. Yesterday we were responsive, so scenario 1 becomes responsive. Today we're initiative against the overall balance up top. And so I am leaning bearish for today. If you look, if I bring in the volume, let's bring in the volume for this entire run up. Unfortunately, this is on tick data, so this will take a little bit to load all of the volume up here. But if you look at the volume up top, there it is. You know, we are shifting away from this upper distribution, which cuts off at 47.40. So we are in this kind of messy middle area right now. And if we continue to squeeze and stay below 66.20, then we are likely to just shift down and start working our way through down into the 65.80 and so on. So in the execution lab today, live trading, I'm going to be monitoring very carefully how the market responds on the open. If it has a weak response on the open, I'd lean harder on the short side and look for inside out shorts targeting the overnight low. That's the primary plan. So what does that look like in terms of scenarios? Let's do that. Man, this software is so unintuitive. I think I've outgrown this broadcasting software. It's done a good job, though, for the last 12, 13 years. So looking for responsive buying. This line in the sand is right up here. Responsive buying, as long as it does not breach that 66.60, I'm looking for it to break lower, for sellers to step back in. See this as an opportunity to search for buyers down below to basically sell at higher prices, expecting the price to fall. And then I'm looking for some sort of exit at the overnight low. And then finally to tag the naked point of control from Friday in the 65.95, something like that. I don't remember what it was. And then to start working itself down towards last week's full session low. That's the overall primary scenario. Again, looking bearish for now. Secondary, open auction makes an attempt at the low, might even poke the low. If we do get an impulse back up through the open, we're likely to go sideways for the session, and this would not bode well for our execution lab today. And then the extreme is likely to be 66.60. Scenario 2 is basically the tired scenario, just like yesterday. And those are the two key plays for today on the ES. Okay? Do you understand I'm not really, the scenarios give me a visual of what areas based on the bias, but also I'm taking into account in these scenarios. Yes, I'm drawing squiggles on the screen, but I'm taking into account historical probabilities when it comes to daily range, 1 vol sigma, existing probabilities, historical probabilities for characteristics that we know, things like prior settle, and so on. I'm taking all of that into account and imagining how things will play out. I'm not married to it doing exactly what I'm saying, but I'm prepared for that scenario, and I'm prepared for the characteristics that I'm describing. And that's how I come into the day ready to execute. That's the key. Here's crude. Crude finally rolls over and really sets itself up deep into the 5,800, gets down into 57.68 in the overnight session. Crude looking pretty weak right now. It is retesting its DGPs in the overnight session right in here, but there's pretty good separation between VWAP and mid. It's sitting right on top of the overnight point of control, right at last week's low. So it's kind of done the job that we expect the S&P to do today on scenario 1. Crude has a line in the sand right up here, looking at 59.20 or so. Below that, it is likely to have a hard time. So what's the expectation for crude? The primary expectation for crude is a sideways. We've opened already. The open is down below. It looks like it wants to be responsive. A pretty good push down and a reciprocating push up leads us to see crude as one that is likely to push through VWAP, struggle a little bit with the full session mid, and then ultimately push into the 59.20 before it pauses. It is opening out of yesterday's range. It's gapping down. We're in a gap situation here in crude, and I'm looking for gap and respond in that product. Crude is a little bit overdone, so to speak, on the selling side. So, how much more selling is there? Secondary scenario, push back up into the mid, basically come right back to the RTH, naked point of control, and then find sellers again and watch itself come down into the overnight low and push down into the 57, 57.20, 57.30 area right in here. That's scenario 2 in crude. I'll leave you with that. It's 8:20. I got to jump. I got to get on Zoom. If you're a member of the accelerator program, please find your Zoom link and let's meet there for 2.5 hours of live trading today. I'll catch you in there. Good luck, and I'll catch you tomorrow morning. By the way, the TraderBite tomorrow will be at 7:45 Central. It'll be 15 minutes earlier because we need to start the accelerator program labs at 8. So 7:45 tomorrow and for the rest of the week through Monday. Okay? Good luck. I'll catch you then. Take care.